Today we're gonna talk with Anna Arteeva. Anna has a contact with a lot of designers because she teaches them how to use AI. In this conversation, you're gonna see what is a typical problem that designers have when they're learning how to use this new technology, and where are we actually better and where are we actually worse. During this whole conversation, there is this one beautiful moment when she shows this case study of giving the task to the teams of product managers and of designers, and what is the outcome of every group. And I think this illustrates beautifully what is kind of the problem that many designers have when it comes to implementing AI in their workflow. This is very interesting episode. I think you're gonna love it. Experience of Anna just shines through, so have a nice listen. Everybody, welcome in studio, Anna Arteeva. Hey everybody, welcome to podcast, and tonight we're gonna talk with Anna Arteeva. She wrote a very interesting article about why designers should learn shadcn, and as we started to explore this topic, it turns out there's quite a lot of stuff that we could talk about it. Currently, she is running AI training for designers, so we're gonna see a perspective not just from one designer, but from a lot of them. So, Anna, welcome to the show.
Hey, happy to be here.
Yes, perfect. So, let's start with a very broad question. I saw your article about shadcn and about all of these libraries, and I kinda felt like this is the direction and into which we are going. I even remember you saying something like, "Pixels are solved," right? So, why do you think designers should learn shadcn? Let's kick off with this.
Well, I don't think designers need to learn Shadzi, and it's more about being aware of the standard, like of the foundational technology that's underneath the vibe coding applications. It's a library, and there is a certain things that make it library preferred by AI. AI coding agents, they have a preferred tech stack, so we know that they all kind of default to React or Next.js, and then they default to shadcn and for UI components. So shadcn is UI component library, and Tailwind for styling. And it's not a coincidence. It's because of the architecture of those things that it made it very modular, very flexible, very easy for AI to understand. And on top of that, there is a lot of training data, and it's kind of good food, very
Mm-hmm.
nutritious food for AI training. And that's what makes it kind of preferred by the agents. And as designers, we need to understand what they are and why, what they have to offer, right? So shadcn is a UI components library. It's very flexible. There are all those components that we are used to, like the buttons, the drop downs, the input fields, the drawers. It's a fairly big library, probably not as big as Material UI, but it's structured in a way that it's very modular. It's brought into your code base, and you don't need to have this black box living somewhere as a dependency, but like you kind of bring it into your code base, and then you can style it to however you like. So you kind of own it, and that's another advantage. And I guess that's where things need to be demystified also, that designers often believe that yeah, it looks like Tailwind, it looks like shadcn, it's like all the same. And that might be true if you are trying to one shot everything. It would look like more or less standard shadcn. Tailwind, by the way, doesn't look like anything. It's just a way to style your components. It doesn't have an inherited look. The benefit with it, though, it's that it's very pliable. It can be customized to any brand, any design, any visual style that you want if you prompt it, if you guide the prompting correctly. Um, yeah, and that's basically why I think designers should care about it and understand it, and not try to fight it, but take advantage of it. Because once you know what's
Mm-hmm.
under the hood, you kind of know how to work with it more effectively.
Yes, exactly. And I kind of agree with this thought that using it helps AI do better job, right? Because as you said, there's a lot of training data, there's a lot of examples, so it can take these components and it can build something from it. And I had this very interesting example. My friend is running a startup right now, right? And they need to go to investors very soon to kind of present their app. And they hired a junior designer to kind of design the app. And he showed me the designs. Like, obviously, the poor designer was trying to do everything they could in a short time frame, right? But when I saw it, my first thought was, honestly, if you want to ship it fast, throw it away. Throw away all of these designs, just write your user flows and then go to AI and use shadcn and build it this way. Because if you are to start from these designs, you're actually going to move slower, and it's actually going to be worse than if you start the other way. So I think this is this core principle that these days, I guess experienced designers should think about this Shetsi and think about speed of delivery, about how AI builds, how everything happens. So my question to you is, what exactly should let's say I'm that junior designer from a story, right? How exactly should I design to kind of adjust to the way AI uses it? Should I even design, or should I just start with writing?
Yes, it's an awesome question. I even before AI, I remember that I always advocated for not building a and design component library from scratch. We would always buy something that's already built out of box. Like in my previous one, we went for material UI, and the benefit is that you're not going to change the world by designing like buttons, right? That's one thing. Another thing that people don't understand is how much effort actually goes into building a components library, and it's all it's not visual. So all those buttons, all those input fields, like they are accessible. The accessibility has to be done right. And when you do it from scratch with your team of 1.5 developers, you probably are not going to worry about accessibility and all those little minor things, because actually that's a lot of work, a lot of effort. So we shouldn't try to reinvent the Lego blocks and take what's already out there and waste and spend our time on building something that actually makes the difference, right? Like on solving the problem. So not building a UI library from scratch, but solving the problem. And Another thing that you mentioned, that this designer spent quite some time on building everything from scratch, right? And we as designers, we used to take pride in like, hey, I built this design system. I designed every pixel myself. I think that's like a typical junior behavior, right? But what I also mentioned before, that actually it has like shadcn has the ability to be transformed into any visual style that you want to have. So this design can be used to be rebuilt with shadcn and kind of followed. Maybe some things would be adjusted. So I wouldn't say it has to be thrown away. So it's still possible to use it, but it would probably be more effective if the designer would first check what the technology that is going to be used and the most effective, and then used already the built-in blocks to put it together as one design instead of kind of building it from scratch. And then the question is Figma still the this output for designers, like an expected output? I think it's a broader question. Or would it be more effective to actually build the entire thing right away and kind of skip Figma altogether?
Yeah, and just from the very beginning, kind of have it pre-built, right? But I think we talked on the podcast a lot about the fact that Figma is kind of moving to the fringes of our work, right? It's not the core, but it's kind of like the last step in some cases. Maybe for documentation, for example, it might be good because you can see everything at once. and you don't have to click around. But yeah, that's probably a very good question. Should you even create a design system in Figma? Maybe it can be all coded and just take components and use them, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to the workflow of this set designer that I described, how do you think step by step person like that, like let's say you have this crazy startup founder that comes to you and he says like, whoa, I have, let's say, a month and I gotta go to investors and I gotta show something, how actually they should move step by step, you know? Because earlier I personally, I gotta admit, I don't know if I'm right on this one right now, but earlier I would advocate to not spend too much time in text, but to do like even sketch, wireframe, because I thought it's more natural for people to think like that. But right now, as we have AI, I kind of threw away that belief. And right now I think like, okay, you know what? Just write it all down in a form, maybe do charts or something that's easily understandable for AI. And that's kind of the first thing I would start. So let's say there's a month, right? We are talking to that one designer right now. What should be their process for shipping fast with the standards that we have today?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think like if you ask, I think about it as a broader kind of like what is the workflow now, like when we have all those tools and there is no answer, and I think there shouldn't be an answer because the workflow is just becoming so much more fluid. And it really depends what you have as a starting point. Maybe you already have everything in Figma and like you have like a huge legacy product, and it might be faster for you to kind of start there and then move to prototyping. Or I think when you're starting from scratch, you're very in a very luxurious situation that you don't have
Yes.
to take all this legacy. You don't have the code legacy. You don't have design legacy. You can really start from the blank. And then, how I guess my workflow would be in this situation is that I would still use Figma to do some wireframes, to kind of put the ideas out there. And by the way, I don't think the role of, like, at least if you're a product designer, maybe 80% of your time you're thinking about the problem, you're talking to users, you're spending time on figuring out the concept, and non-visual concept, more like the flow kind of concept, right? And then the last thing you do polishing pixels, and now polishing pixels can be even more reduced. So I would probably spend time on thinking somewhere around Figma, me, but I would definitely not make it pixel perfect there. That's, I think that's dead. Like Figma for pixel perfection. I already didn't believe it before AI. I always believed in UI engineer role, being like having the technical background myself. And now I think that's like it's available to everyone. Like stop like making polishing your pixels in Figma. Move it earlier to code. So that's one thing. Another thing that can be very useful is that we can co-create with AI. If you have some flows that are more or less standard, they're already solved. For example, it's a checkout flow, like for e-commerce website or something like that. It would take you a lot longer even to wireframe it in Figma. Instead of that, you can open your vibe coding tool of choice, be it the Lovable, V0, whatever you're using. Maybe Claude, the same thing, like they have more or less the same underlying kind of agents underneath. And then just tell it, I'm building this application. It has to do those like checkout, like onboarding, the standard flows, and it would code it for you, and voila, you have the first draft. And I would really do it rather in code than in tools like Stitch, because I believe code is inherently it's just better for documentation. So AI agents, they tend to produce better results in code. It's just more logic. And then you have the first sketch, and then you can spend time polishing it or and applying your style. Maybe you do some visual style back in Figma, then you kind of apply it to your vibe coded application. But at least you have the core flows, core system. And so you kind of switch back and forth. And then it depends like what is more comfortable for you, right? Like, oh, where you want to have the focus. Do you like, are you a design agency? So you want to have something like super edgy and super kind of well designed. Maybe then you spend more time in your visual design tool on coming up with this kind of the brand feel, like something unique. But
Mm-hmm.
if you build in a SaaS application, then I think it's a lot more effective to vibe code the entire thing right away and only maybe do some wireframes, if at all, in Figma.
Yes, I totally agree. I think that essentially by stripping away the UI problem from the very beginning and just using libraries, I personally think that this way you're focusing more on the problem that's there to the solve, and you're not over focusing on pixels, right? Because as I I love this quote that pixels are solved. I'm just in love with this quote, and so I think by kind of upfront saying, okay, this is my restriction. I'm just gonna use this library. Don't even tweak it at the beginning. I would even say that. I mean, that's me, but I would say don't even tweak it, because this way you restrict yourself and you say, okay, I'm not gonna waste time on this. I'm gonna focus on something different, like on how the product works. And I'm curious to hear your opinion. I'm gonna tell you how I work these days. So the way I personally create tools right now is that I noticed that the first version that I built is usually a throwaway. I treat it as something where I just move fast, I just generate ideas, and from the very beginning, I think like I'm not probably gonna make a production version out of this. So I just open the Claude Code and I just speak to it. Like I describe my whole idea and everything I want, and then I tell it, look, this is my idea. Ask me questions if something is unclear, and then build me a PRD. And then it basically asks me the question. I'm like, oh, I didn't tell it this. Oh, I didn't tell it that, right? So I clarify how the whole thing looks. Sometimes I tell it, like, ask me everything that you need. And sometimes I regret it because it really can ask a lot of questions. But it's good because it kind of behaves as an interviewer. I mean, that's the job that us as designers we used to do, right? And it kind of pulls this data out of you. It builds a PRD. Then I build this PRD like one shot, let's say, and then I kind of improve and tweak it. I break a couple of stuff, I change a couple of stuff. I'm like, oh, actually in my head this looks better than it looks on the screen, right? And then I kind of experiment till I, let's say, reach some form where I'm like, all right, I gotta start again. And I take this everything that kind of was born in my head and I build anew with the intention that, okay, this is probably gonna be the final thing. And that's how I build. And then I go to users. So that's my flow. What do you think about it when you are working with people? I mean, obviously you're teaching AI, so everybody listening, in case you need the training, here you go. What is the process that you show the people? Is it similar to this or is it different?
Yeah, I think it could be a good idea, and also because you can explore multiple solutions at the same time. So you can vibe code something that goes that direction, and then see if it goes that direction. So you can produce multiple systems, multiple prototypes, and then either test them all or maybe expand one into something that you like. Sorry.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Also, you can throw it away. But it's coding is a modular system, right? So you can just keep building and removing stuff depending on what you use. It's refactoring is kind of not that difficult. So that's kind of like you can throw it away. You can continue building in it. I don't think there's a hard rule. Or if you want to build it into an actual code base, then you just give your prototype to developers and they rebuild it there. So then you don't like look at code and you don't think about kind of if it's spaghetti code or if it's something meaningful. So there's no one way to do it. But I think there another thing, which is a different topic, but I really because you brought this pixels are solved quote, and I think it's like there's so much to it, and I'm just so excited actually, because a lot of people treat vibe coding, especially for designers, is like, hey, we can do those like fancy interactions, we can build design, it actually behaves, it does something. But it's still a very visual approach to it. But I think once you change from Figma, which is entirely visual canvas, into code, and it kind of becomes a little bit more like it has more dimensions than just visual. So we have UI, but we can also integrate it with actual functionality, right? We can integrate it with other modes of interaction. So we can play with voice interface, for example. It's like you just hook it up to AI model and then it suddenly can talk to you or it can generate text. So you kind of start like expand of what the experience is. And experience is not only pixels, but it's a lot more that goes to it. And then you suddenly start like, okay, if it's a voice interface, like how should it go? Or if we can have some functionality that generates code for us, how do we design the behavior the chat is interacting with us? And I think that's where it gets really interesting, right? So you kind of you have this UI canvas that you've been built in, and of course you can obsess over interactions and make it super fluid and responsive, and also kind of test it in all devices, which is not possible in Figma because you're kind of limited by the breakpoints that like you cannot design too many. So it's so many like the directions, and it kind of also expand your thinking. Like you're not thinking only about pixels anymore. Like you're thinking about the design as something bigger, like interaction as something bigger than just the visual interaction. So I think that's a
Yes,
whole
I
new.
remember you even said that a lot of modern products don't even have UI.
Yeah, right. I'm so like that's the thing. Like if you listen to design kind of like a podcast and stuff, and they are talking a lot about like, hey, I've designed these shaders and this beautiful interaction, and then you have Claude Code that is really kind of it's the most fastest growing product with non-developers, like just regular users using it from the terminal. So it has no UI, right? Or if you like one of my favorite one product that I discovered last year is Whisper Flow. So I'm not typing anymore. I'm talking. And the only thing I see is this little like thing on the screen, and I just press the FN button and it listens to me, and then it converts everything into like meaningful text, and it cuts out all the filler words and rephrase it in a way that it sounds meaningful. And the UI is basically minimal. I don't see it all. And you like if you design something like that in Figma, it's like, okay, we have this bar and that's all UI we have. That's like ridiculous, right? But once you like get out of this Figma mindset, you can think in more three dimensions, right?
Yes, yes, I totally agree because personally, I mean, I'd say it pretty much in every episode that Whisperflow is one of my favorite apps. And there's so much that goes into it because first thing is that there are different sounds when you press it, when you hold it, when you lock it. So pretty much every feedback is not visual. I mean, there is small visual bubble, but a lot of feedback is through audio. So you kind of understand if it launched exactly the way you want it to launch. And then, when the text, as you said, it's not just transcription. Sometimes it looks at your text and it's sometimes I say like, and then we go higher, I'm sorry, lower, and it automatically just adjusts the text so it doesn't have this mistakes that I made that as I was going along. And this is also part of the experience, how it should work, right? And as you said, you cannot design it in Figma. This is something that needs to be created and developed in the code because that's actually where the experience lies. So I totally agree that escaping the Figma is a thing. I personally these days I don't do any design in Figma. I mean, I know I'm a radical. The people, I mean, as you said, not having the legacy as advantage. All right, is a privilege that when I'm building something, I don't have to abide by the rules of a huge corporation that have like very strict design system, stuff like that. So I can just sit in Claude Code, and Figma is more for the legacy flows. But I will try to circle back one time to this process because I'm really curious to hear your opinion on it. We are not talking about the book example of the perfect process, but I would love to understand your example of the process, how you usually frame it. So we kind of said, okay, with this UI components, just take something that's already been built. I remember earlier you said that even companies existing, they're taking their design systems and rebuilding them So they're more similar to shadcn, like the GitHub example you provided, right? So that's insane, first of all. When we look at the process of a designer, let's come back to this example of starting designer that has to ship within a month. Uh, what would you recommend as the steps? Do you think this PRD approach and then just a flow of creating is the right thing, or you like to start with flows? I know some people still prefer to start with pen and paper.
Yeah, it's totally valid. And I like if you're used to pen and paper, because that's a completely different way of thinking, and it's totally valid as part of the flow. And I guess that's the part that AI probably will not take away. And then if you want to continue iterating in Figma, then sure. Or if you want to go directly in the code, that's also fine. So yeah, I think that it's like hard to give the exact workflow. And back to this design system example, I think that's the new age for design systems now, because actually, like the first thing, like you want to have those design system and give it to your people who are vibe coding, so they don't have to start every time from scratch, and they can already use your building blocks. And those building blocks, they have to be AI friendly, right? So if you have a massive legacy design system, and then you came up with your variables naming and components naming that is like unconventional, then AI will simply not understand it, and it will not know how to use it. And on top of that, if you have some exotic technology, right? If you have some framework that is not very common, AI is just not going to be good with it. So, and that's what I'm seeing companies are doing, and a lot of companies, in fact, like, that they are rebuilding their design system, their components in like in AI-friendly technologies. So would be Next.js, React, shadcn, Tailwind. Um, and they build those building blocks that are perfectly mimicking their existing design system. So like it doesn't mean that they look different. They look exactly the same. It's just the underlying technology now is different. And then you can use it for prototyping or for vibe coding, anything. So it doesn't necessarily need to go to production. They can like you can still give developers, they rebuild it with their old system. But then you can give those building blocks to anyone. And the funny thing is that it's goes so much outside of design designers, like design team or even product team. So you can give this design system to designers, and they start building with it. But yeah, kind of they also want to invent the new components, right? So might be also restricting them in some ways, but that's kind of they know they used to this, so they follow their common process. But then you can give those building blocks, those themes, the tailwind theme, to anyone else outside of product organization. And I've seen people from HR, an HR director who vibe coded the entire new employee onboarding experience, and then she did the chart like how the people would move from one level to another, and it's all interactive, it's all based, it's like an internal tool that she as an HR director should just like build and type in. And that's where it clicked for me. It's like it's so much bigger than product. I
Yes.
saw the go-to-market people, they are making product demos, building vibe coding product demos, or they build their own internal kind of tools. So there was company that is payments. They serve restaurants with payment provider kind of devices. And their go-to-market people would go to those restaurants, and they have the menu, and the restaurants are very low tech. They only have this paper menu. They don't have it anywhere digital. So what they would do, they vibe coded an app that they can go to those restaurants, take a photo of the menu, and the app would transform it into a database and send all the menu items and the prices into the database. Problem solved. And go to market build it completely themselves. So like it's basically enabling everyone who never had access to developers, like proper developer resources before. Now they can just build the entire like thing. And if they do it with the building blocks that you as a design system team provides into them, it's just going to be a lot more on brand. So eventually it's not it doesn't have to be an internal tool. It can also be go outside and be shown to customers.
Yes, and even, for the sake of consistency, I think taking care of the fact that internal tools maybe all look the same. I mean, that probably can be a good thing as well, even for management of these tools. I spoke with designers from Shopify, and what they have is pretty much this playground where their design system is loaded and already API keys to critical services. So people who have like no idea what API key is and what design system is, they just say what they want, and the system has library, has API keys, and allows them, like, kind of makes it even one step easier for them, all right, to build what they want to build, because they don't have to choose components, they don't have to connect anything. And these playgrounds are appearing everywhere. Actually, that's very interesting because I see in corporations teams who are responsible for design system right now evolving to these teams that are responsible for this AI playgrounds and enabling everybody to create these internal tools. So, even managers, as you say, or HR team can build right now, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think it's probably like design system team probably should go somewhere outside of the product organization eventually, because it's like something that will enable the entire company to build something. And I think that's where companies are starting to take it very seriously, because it just spits out every department, not only product creation, but every department.
Yes,
And like
yes. Maybe,
teaching people.
even maybe it would even be a good idea that designers just work with the departments. Somebody has idea what to do. They, let's say, create it on their own. But if it improves the process in that specific department, then let's go. Let's make it good. Let's make it work, right? Because eventually we can build as many tools and automate as many things in the company as possible. I mean, I don't know about you, but in my, let's say, social bubble, I see a lot of developers right now offering this kind of a tech audit, that they will come to your company, understand your processes, and then they will automate what's there to automate, right? So that's kind of what people are doing on their own right now with tools like that.
I mean, there's so much that can be like part of it. Like you need to teach people, even though vibe coding is like very easy, you sometimes need to show people what is possible, so they can kind of think outside of the box. I was training one team, it was mostly design and product team, and then there was one growth manager and product manager in the training in office, and the designers were like, okay, it has to really be like on brand and has to really look. So they spend a lot of time with the same material that I was given, like had some practice session, spend a lot of time on making it look right. In the meantime, after the same session, this growth manager, he just vibe coded the entire thing. He hooked it up to a database. He created a dynamic map, and the map would show all the locations that they would have. So like because he's not like limited by what is possible, like and what like how it has to look like by pixels basically, he just kind of solved his problem. And yes, it didn't look exactly on brand, but it solved his problem. It made him probably so much more productive. Gave him like another tool. So yeah, but you need to show the way. And I think that's why I like starting not with Claude Code. Just yesterday, I made a session where it was my final session of my 1 month course, and we did the Claude Code kind of exam practice. And before that, we were using Lovable, we were using Cursor, but mostly Lovable. And in Lovable, you're starting there, you're just giving the problem, like, I want to build this up, and then you don't need to give much more context. And then I wanted to have a database, and bam, you have a database. I wanted to connect to kind of to connect to some AI API, or like not even API. I want to have it AI functionality, and bam, it's like all abstracted. Everything for you. You have now AI functionality. It's talking to you. It's generating your images. Like you can do voice interface. Like you don't need to know any of those things. And then you have this magic moment, and then you hit the publish button, and like it's online, you share it with your colleagues. I was like, and this magic moment and like this simplicity of this tool is just unlocking so much, right? And then when you go to Claude Code, and of course you can use the skills, and you can use the different tech stacks, and it's like but then like if you want a database, you need to connect it to, like, let's say Superbase, and then like you need to figure out how to do it, and then you need to probably use the MCP or figure out, and then you need to deploy it. And then, okay, you need another account, like you need to create an account of Vercel and Netlify. And first, you need to kind of sync it to GitHub, and GitHub ignored some files, and then you deploy it to Vercel, and you need to debug it. So everything is just taking longer, and that's why people are scared of it. So it's probably not the right first step. And I think that's where, like, when you're training people, like especially non-tech people who like had never worked with APIs before, right? Like your designer, for example, like, and then you explain how easy it is actually to use it, and it's just like expand the thinking, and like now they have completely different ideas what they can do with it, and they start inventing new things that you didn't think about, right? As a trainer, because you don't have those problems, they have those problems. So yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. It's as you said, it might sound. I think Lovable is and tools like V0, Lovable, and stuff like that. They're kind of a good first step because, as you said, all this small, because they are small, but complexities are removed, right? Database, API, stuff like that. You just start having fun with AI. Plus, the shift is not so drastic because you still have Canvas, right? And then Cloud Code, I think what's kind of weird for people is like, all right, I just have a chat, like it's a very big shift from Figma where everything was visual and we were touching everything. And I love your example where you said that designers were kind of thinking on how to make it look good while product manager just solved the idea. And I love it because I think for a lot of us, because we've been working with this design for so long, we have this curse of knowledge, and that we're kind of stuck to thinking how things should be, how things should work. And what I noticed is that when there are people who have, for example, 15 or 20 years of experience, back into being like web designers, back before being like graphic designers, sometimes for them the switch is even harder than for new people that come in, and they don't know what they shouldn't do, they just do it. And as you said, it kind of feels magical because you see people just experimenting with stuff that for us as people who've been in the industry and working in this box of a Figma for a long time, it kind of shows you totally different thinking. And a lot of people are saying about blending of roles, that the roles right now will start to blend, that designers will become a little bit of developers, a little bit of managers. And as you're training people, what do you see is the biggest complexity and problem for designers in entering this new world, and how people can approach it? This episode is sponsored by us. We are paying for everything, for tools, for management, for pretty much everything that goes into production of these videos. Our core goal is to share the knowledge of design, of AI with everybody who wants to learn for free. This podcast is and will always be for free, but if you wish to support us and help us in this venture, I would really appreciate it. You can go to our website, which is nueva.design, and over there is a $9 package that helps us create content like this. This is totally optional. Thank you for being with us. And now back to the podcast.
Yeah. There are so many threads to unpack here. I feel like. First of all, I just really wanted to kind of like you started that you kind of like the curse of knowledge, and it is so true. I've been kind of developer earlier in my career before I turned myself into a full-time designer. I was a designing developer, and I'm like so familiar with code and with this like Cursor kind
IDE,
of
yeah.
systems ID. And then I've been vibe coding in Cursor for a very long time. And then Claude Code came out. And just yesterday I was preparing my course, and it's like, okay, Claude Code has the hype. And just out of experiment, I decided to design to build exactly the same thing in like Claude Code, Codex, and Cursor. in parallel. And like, yeah, because I'm really trying to understand why so much hype. It's not like it was impossible before. Like we could use Figma MCP in Cursor. It was like fine, you can build exactly the same thing. And yeah, maybe Claude Code is like slightly more powerful when you go to like super complex things, but it's just like I don't have use cases for those super complex things that are not accessible to Cursor and Codex. So it's like I really need to crack it. I don't understand why is it like I understand like it's hyped, but like why so much? It wasn't impossible before. It didn't make a revolution. So I started building in parallel, and Claude Code. I used the Pro subscription, the minimum one. It ran out of credits twice. Then it just took longer, and Codex was completely smooth. Cursor did the same thing and never ran out of credits and never ran out of credits. And Cursor is like, I don't get it. Like it's the same thing. So it's like the hype. And then because I build it for applications, like I make web applications, and then another thing that hit me is I did a lot more other things in Claude Code. Like for example, I was sending emails to my participants with some vouchers, with some gift cards that I bought. So I used Claude Code to generate me an agent that would buy gift cards for me, and then I would give it a database with the emails, and it would write emails with like names and give a specific gift card to every participant. And then I did it in Claude Code. But then I thought like, well, I can do the same thing in Cursor, but never occurred to me that I can do the same thing in Cursor. It's like this different interface, and like, okay, I use this interface to build applications, web applications, but I didn't realize that I can also do like it for anything, like any automation. So I guess Claude Code, what it enabled it, it has this like blank canvas, like it has like this chatbot, do whatever with it. And then people started coming up with ideas. It's like, yeah, but like I don't need an application, but I need this automation and I have this problem. And then because it's not restraining you in a specific mode of thinking, you kind of like you become really creative and start solving problems that you wouldn't even think about before. And I think that's when you go back to Figma, right? Because you only think in the visual kind of canvas, then you don't even consider other interactions. And there's kind of the same parallel, right? So once
I
you
love
have
it.
access to them, you start thinking in different dimensions.
I
And
love it. It's how people just don't know that it's not built for X, and they just come up with their own ideas. Plus, I love it. I think this is probably my favorite part of what we spoke so far. It's I totally agree with this. Plus, I don't know if you've heard, but there was this situation where IBM stocks fell like 13% or something like that because one person just wrote like, hey, Cloud Code can actually handle the Cobalt code, which were like IBM was relying on it because it was like bank finance, very old system that very few people knew. And it's not like a month ago AI couldn't do it. It's just nobody thought of it. And then just one person kind of wrote like, hey guys, we can do everything, all this stuff, and like every developer can pretty much work in Cobalt, and then boom, the stocks fell. And I mean, for a company like IBM, I don't know exact numbers, but it's like millions. It's literally millions of dollars because one person just showed a use case, and it's like a real value that people lost on the stock or earned, right? So the fact, the reason why I didn't use Cursor, and when I first discovered Cursor, I was like in love with it. But then when I discovered Cloud, I'm like, okay, Cursor, you're great, but goodbye. And as you said, Cloud kind of showed this new interface. Plus, they built special function called Cowork, which is kind of exactly the same thing when you think about it. I mean, it is the same model, it is the same loop, it has the same tools. The only thing is that they kind of show you, okay, here you code, here you do everything else,
yeah, yeah,
right? And
exactly.
I don't know if you saw, but Cursor also abandoned their idea for the interface. And like I think 2 days ago, they changed the whole UI.
Yeah, today.
Yeah, right now they released Cursor 3.0, and it's
Okay.
pretty much copy of Cloud Code.
Oh, I see. But it makes sense because they released the agent mode a while ago, and I think here it's where I have this cursor knowledge because I'm just so familiar, like I'm so comfortable with the cursor interface, and then suddenly they just hit the code from me. It's like, no, I need it. I need my like my files and buttons, and that's why like Claude Code was like, yeah, but where is the code? It's like
Yes.
way too simple when you already have the workflow. So I really needed to shift my mind to kind of like, yeah, but actually I don't need to see it. Like I'm totally fine with just like prompting.
It's
Um,
good enough.
yeah, it's totally fine because then you also like you free up your mind to think in bigger picture.
You
Um,
know, maybe this is the same for developers as it is for us, because for developers to let go of the code and kind of accept it and, just to be this manager, it's kind of the same as for us as a designer, us let go of design system.
Mhm.
Just use shadcn and Tailwind, and focus on something bigger.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just the foundational blocks. We started with shadcn and now we moved so far away from it. But that's the thing, like that, like don't think about those atoms, like think about all those new interactions. And I think that's going back to the role you mentioned the roles, right? Like everybody is a builder now, and like what is a designer will become managers and programmers would do something else, like developers would do something else, and all those kind of things, all overlapping and blurring. The boundaries are blurring, and I think that's where it becomes really interesting also for designers because maybe that's where we can redefine the design role. And we were always thinking about like design as a visual communication, right? And if you're like stuck with this mindset, then yeah, visual communication is becoming very like a lot simplified. Like you can still flow perfection, and people are talking about like visual craft for designers, and now it's a lot more important, and design is a differentiator of the products, like where you don't look like AI. But I mean, on the other hand, the trends, the hiring trends are not supporting this, right? So we see designers are kind of not being hired that much because yeah, we're kind of stuck in this mindset. But if we kind of get outside of it and stop thinking about only visual communication, but about interaction and experience as a whole, it just redefines the role of design, and like you becoming more thinking like multidimensional thinker, right? And I think that's the next step for designers. So like you're not pushing pixels anymore. You're not building basic components. You're not building kind of the wireframes anymore. It's not your role. You're thinking about interaction, like holistic interaction as a whole, and maybe it would become even more like dimensional. Like we talk about visual, voice interfaces. We talk about like vision, chatbots. Maybe we don't even have screens. They also need to be designed like those interactions that screenless, basically, and
I'm very curious to hear your opinion on the technical aspect of all of this, because earlier, I mean, there was a lot of conversations regarding should designers code or stuff like that, right? And I don't know if code is exactly the word I would use right now, but do you think designers should be technical right
yeah.
now? Because is this a new direction that we should go to? Because we had like software architects in the earlier days that were kind of designing how APIs work, how everything's connect. And design, let's be honest, it was pushed more to the fringe of the process, right? I mean, of course, we still had an impact and stuff like that, but it wasn't by the book as it was described, where design was a leading. I mean, there was a moment where people were considering maybe we should have design chief design officer and CEO level, right? We don't have that. We don't have that. We have CTO. We don't have CDO. So it tells you something, And uh, right now, as kind of field grows, I feel like some designers are starting to get into territory of thinking how API should work, how data should flow, how that stuff should behave. So, how do you think, and the new role of designer will, how technical will it
Yeah.
become?
It's a great question. And I think, yes, like the answer is yes, designers should become technical, but the definition of what technical means is redefined. So, like, for example, I cannot write a React component from scratch. I don't understand React. I was never writing in React, but I'm perfectly fine teaching it now, right? So I understand enough to connect it into something that is a working system. And I think that's where the technicality, the new definition of what technical means is like you need to understand the underlying concept. So you as a designer, as a product manager, you need to understand what API is as a whole, like what front end is, like what backend is, what is possible there. But you don't need to know the nuanced like code writing. Like, like you need to understand what like Tailwind is, but you don't need to memorize all the Tailwind classes that are there. Like it's uh, and I think that's where it becomes interesting. So we kind of need to broaden our knowledge, like and cover a lot more. Like I think also in development, they would probably move a lot more full stack because they need to understand how the system works together, but they don't need to write code line by line anymore. Like they don't need to memorize the specific language, the grammar of React and how it is different from like Angular. So it's only like the conceptually they need to understand. And I heard, I think in Lenny's podcast, was someone from Anthropic, I believe, and there's someone like who wrote like a whole system in a language that he wasn't even like, he didn't even know before, right? So he vibe coded the entire thing. And he as an engineer, he can do it because even without like knowing the syntaxes of the language, he can do it because he understand how conceptually those language the development works, like how the architecture needs to be built, and he does need to get in depth into like specificity of the syntaxes of this specific language. And same with designers. I think we need to understand a lot more how the front end and the interaction, the API can connect to one another, but we don't need to write the API connection themselves. We just need to understand that, like, okay, API is how the data is transformed, and there is a secret, and the secret has to be stored in a secure place, and like the API key, and it can then talk to the database, and to like the database is like structured like that, and it can then talk to like your AI model, and then you need to understand what the system prompt is, but like you don't need to know how to build this architecture from scratch. So and I think that's where I had this revelation during the course, because my course is kind of like focused on giving you this ecosystem, like when you can build the entire thing, it can look good, it can speak to you, it has the database, and then with designers like, okay, I've just built this thing, like and you don't need to know much, you just need to understand the concept, and then you kind of unlock a completely new mode of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, yes. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that, It's kind of like as if we are moving up in the abstractions layer. For example, when we use computer, nobody really understands how pixels on your screen happen. You just accept that they happen. But I mean, I studied engineering, like IT, but and they explained this stuff to me, but to be honest, I still don't get it. Like, how is it possible that there's a lot of transistors, they do a lot of stuff, and boom, suddenly I see your face on my screen? That's I just know that there is a website that I can go over here as we are speaking, and I know that it works. But to be honest, I don't understand up to the very bottom, how the motherboard and stuff like that operates. So I think it's kind of the same with the code that these days we can assume that as for today, AI is already good enough, and it's only going to become better, that this stuff you don't have to understand it anymore. You can just treat it as something that works, and you can just work on this higher abstraction level, right? And for example, as I spoke with Matt, who's the staff product designer. Basically, he said that in his work, he's not even using that much visual design at all. He's mainly talking about APIs, data flows, and how these things impact the experience. How if our endpoint of API is designed in such a way that it provides this and this and this info, we cannot show some data on the front end. Earlier, as a designers, we wouldn't even go into this territory. That would be called strictly technical aspects. We don't know nothing about it. But that's kind of why I like the idea of changing the title from product designer to design engineer. because I think this kind of gives us clear separation line that, okay, product designers are people who work the old way, let's say, and design engineers are people who work the new way, and it kind of gives the beginning and ending to phases. Because for me personally, it feels like the change happened so fast that it pretty much is the new phase.
I think that's the next iteration and of fight of UX designers versus product designers. Now we have product designers versus design engineers. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I agree that it's definitely changing. Like it's going to rewrite how the design think and what kind of skill set we need. So I think that's going to be quite turbulent time for a lot of folks who who are not ready for this change, and they don't want to think about this new dimensions that are available to them now.
All right. Cool. Anna, so we have the traditional here that at the end of each podcast, we share some tips and tricks with our audience regarding portfolio and regarding building the case study in these times. So I would love to hear your advice as you've been teaching people how to use AI. You worked with many different designers. What do you think? How designers these days can stand out in this vast competition and show that they're up to date?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, I think if you're not vibe coding your portfolio as a designer, like what are you even doing right, with your life? Like if you're looking for a job, like you definitely need to have like a website with a URL, and there you can go kind of really be creative and put all your vibe coding skills into making it stand out, because people who are facing this, like hiring managers, I assume they have a very trained eye for AI slop and something where people kind of put effort into and really used their creativity to make it unique and not AI looking. So that's the first thing. Create a real creative portfolio that is vibe coded. I think the case studies are probably slowly going away, like a long reads of case studies. But what is returning is the pet project, and that's what else I heard, that it can give you more, like, it make you more valuable to kind of tell like, hey, I've just vibe coded, like I've built this application that's like a fitness tracker that lives on my phone and it's kind of tracking my food habits. I don't know, all those things. So you kind of and I think that's the best way to start vibe coding, just to solve your own problems that are probably not viable businesses, right? But they're kind of fun to play with, and once you're kind of doing those things, you're solving your problem. That's a good thing, but you're also learning without realizing that you're learning. And I think those tinkering, building, curious designers are something that really attracts attention. And like I've been talking to a couple of hiring managers, and that's what they also mentioned. That's yeah, we want to see builders. We don't want to see people who kind of stuck in the old beliefs, or if you have a PDF portfolio, then it's kind of no. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it's
Although
kind of like I feel we're kind of back in this cycle that earlier it was about showing that you can build something pretty, like in Photoshop or Sketch or Figma. Then when it's saturated, it was like, okay, don't just build pretty, but show that you can think, right? And then everybody started doing this case studies. A lot of people had this cookie cutter persona, wireframe, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's they're also needed to be differentiated from that. And right now we are slowly moving back to just show that you can do something cool,
mhm.
right? Show that you can make it move, make it feel alive. And I think that case studies, the old way, yeah, probably is also good to show that you think. But if it's not moving, if it's not interactive, if it's cookie cutter, yeah,
I guess it's still
I
kind of
totally agree.
your, because the process might it depends on your role as well, like what your role is.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. So, Anna, thank you for this conversation. It's been a really thoughtful and great chat. So, that's pretty much it. In the end, maybe if you want to promote your upcoming course, do you have something upcoming?
I have it pretty much happening regularly. So it's in Maven. Just look for my name in Maven. We are doing one for product designers or like designers in general. And I'm also doing it with Jan Zix and Kevin Cannon from GitHub, the principal designer at GitHub and the director of design at Superhuman. So I'm kind of learning from them as well. And there we cover the vibe coding end to end. So not only pretty shaders, but actually we're talking about like the front end, the back end, the API, and we're making interface like the voice things and like AI features. So it's I guess that's because I'm very passionate about it. I kind of include it all in my course. So that's one thing. And I'm also launching one for product managers where I'm doing with the Julia Bastian and Vlad Daskalov, and they give more of a product perspective on how to kind of transform the organization from the product, but also to the vibe coding, but maybe less from a design angle, more from product angle. Right, so that's me. Just check out my LinkedIn and see what's coming up, and yeah, I hope
Yeah.
to see you over
Okay.
there.
That's perfect. So thank you a lot, Anna, and thank you everybody for listening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.